This is the Giraffes Don't Eat Steak podcast, a show that brings you marketing stories, tips, hints, and much more. A treat for those who want to succeed in business or marketers who just want to learn.
Hello, Alex.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I am good. I am so excited to bring Laura to our podcast today. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Laura, help me pronounce your surname because I've just suddenly realized I was too scared to say it. I thought, oh, I'm gonna say it wrong.
So it's pronounced exactly as it reads, Ayienga.
Oh, I would have said it right. Okay,
Yeah.
I should have said it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just suddenly got a fright, when your brain suddenly freezes. I'm like, oh no.
No worries.
So, Alex, Laura is a bit like you. And I thought, well, this is a good topic for us because Laura lives in the UK but works for a company based here in the UK. And
Lives in
similarly,
Kenya.
Lives in Kenya.
I mean,
Lives in Kenya.
other way around, lives in Kenya and works for a company in the UK. And similar to you, Alex, right? You also have clients here in the UK.
But live in Colombia.
That live in Colombia. Well, opposite time zones, but yes, well, similar weather. You guys both have sunshine, and I'm stuck here in the rain. But
Is Kenya on the equator? No.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it
It
is.
is. Ah, so we probably have the same weather.
you've got the same
Yeah.
weather.
Same
Sunny
relative
almost
time.
throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, that's a good conversation because more and more we're seeing this sort of hybrid working, this digital nomad situation with marketers, right? And just thought we could unpack some of the pros, the cons, what's working, what's difficult about it. So, Laura,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about how you got into this role.
So should I start from when I was in school?
Up to you. Tell us whatever you want us to
Okay.
know.
So I went into school to study communication, which is more journalism and along those lines. But then halfway through, I felt like it wasn't challenging enough for me, at least, but I didn't want to drop it altogether. So I took up an additional challenge, which was marketing. It was more of a gamble. It just looked shiny and I was very interested in it at the time. So completed school, went into my first internship, which was the biggest media house in Kenya, Royal Media Services. And there I was doing digital marketing for that company. And then my career just evolved in that line. So I practically didn't end up working in the communication or journalism field at all. I fell in love with marketing and I've been in it ever since. So in 2022, so almost 3 years ago now, I applied for the role of marketing manager at Outside Ideas, which is a business support company offering networking, mastermind groups, and business coaching. And I got the role. So I've been there almost 3 years now, and I love it. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so you've had a mixture of remote, hybrid, and full-time in the office jobs.
Yeah, but when I started working, it was around COVID period. So that was 2020 January. So when we first started, it was fully physical, face-to-face. And then halfway through, this was in the media house. Obviously, COVID hit and we did hybrid. And then I went into agency, which again, it was still during COVID period. So 2020, 2021. So it was hybrid again. So I've never really worked in an office physically Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Yeah.
That's incredibly interesting. I mean, that's a really unique period of somebody's life to start properly really working.
Yeah.
That's never ever happened in the history of humanity. That
The most I've done is hybrid 3 times or 2 times a week, but never fully in an office.
Wow.
And Alex and I both, well, probably more me than Alex, but we were 5 days a week in the office. That's where we started. And COVID hit.
Weird. We sound weird for saying that. 5 days.
I know. And it was normal, right? We did it without even thinking.
Yeah.
And now anyone says to us 5 days a week in the office, we're like, no.
No, thank you. Especially in Kenya, it's the transition is ridiculous. If you work physically in an office, we have so much traffic. So they'll say 9 to 5, but you'll end up working 5 p.m. to, 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Because half the time you're on the road, you still have to meet your KPIs. So I think it only makes sense for some roles to just be online.
Online, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
really good.
so what have been, other than missing the traffic, what are like your biggest wins for this kind of virtual working?
I think in a role that's in a creative role, you need the space to think. You need the space to explore different opportunities and whatnot. And I think when you're in a physical office, you're just boxed to, be behind your laptop the whole day, not seek inspiration from anywhere. I actually visited a friend's office the other day and I was like, whoa, and why are you sitting next to the director? That's very scary. The opportunity to think creatively is very limited when you're in an office. Yeah, so that's been one of the greatest things about working from home.
I think that really resonates with me. I mean, I'll just use the example of when Eric and I were working together in office. Everybody in the office was either a data-driven person or finance or
So
an
boring.
Yeah, in short.
And everybody wanted just pure silence in the office. Like
Yeah.
when we were talking, because we were sort of shoved in a corner, basically, Erica and I. And even if we were just talking a little bit about something, I felt like we were always just trying to whisper or something. So even just our communicating was
Stifled.
sorry?
Stifled.
Yeah, it was stifled as
Yeah.
well. So that just stifled absolutely everything. And then when we actually had good ideas is when, well, let's be honest, when we just went out and had a cocktail or something. And then like all of the ideas just started running through our brains and we started getting really creative. So I completely resonate with that. And like even working at home now, I can just sort of block off everything and just really think about what I want to do and just sit there in my own creative mind and let it go. And you just can't get that in an office environment.
I think that's what I appreciate the most.
Go for a walk, right? You can just go for a walk or go to the gym or break away from the routine.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Listen to some music, bask in the sun, get some new ideas and come back to it.
Only bask in the sun if you're in Kenya or Colombia.
Yes, not here. Not here.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then what has been the most difficult thing for you I mean, you've got time zone differences, there must be cultural differences. Like what has been the most difficult thing?
I think obviously the cultural differences sticks out to me the most. And it's culture in terms of not just language, but there's, design, humor, the way people communicate with each other. I remember when I first started working actually at Outside Ideas, I imagine that we're both English speaking. So it's the UK, we're a Commonwealth country. I thought it should be very obvious the way that we communicate. But then just being in the role made me realize that there's so many nuances to language and tone and like what you say to somebody and, what they laugh at. In Kenya, for example, we're notorious for memes. So we laugh at everything, literally the most serious things, and Kenyans will be laughing at them the whole day, creating graphics and emojis and whatnot about, serious things, even politics and whatnot. But then in the UK, the jokes are a bit more contextualized. It's not very easy to find people making fun of something political. While in Kenya, politics is literally a joke. We'll be laughing about it for days. People will be making fun of the politicians and whatnot. Yeah,
it's very true. Those cultures, and we find the same between like we've done work with Americans in South Africa and Australia, for example. They all have very different senses of humor, especially like the Australians and the Americans. The Americans have a very, like the UK has a very dry sense of humor. In America, there's a lot more kind of like a silly sense of humor. And that really makes an impact on the way that you communicate with people. And I guess like when you studied when you studied communication in Kenya, I guess that was just, very much focused around the journalism part of how to be a journalist in Kenya, or were you taught that there are different ways of journalism, just different forms of journalism around the world, or was it predominantly focused in Kenya?
Yeah, so I think it was primarily in Kenya, but then that's where the marketing comes in, because with marketing, it's all about target audience. So whether you're learning local marketing or international marketing, it all boils down to understanding your audience. For example, in Kenya, our social classes are very varied. So even if you're in the capital city, you'll find the extremely rich and the extremely poor all in the same locality. And the way you speak to these people has to be different. So you kind of learn that whether it's local marketing or international marketing, whoever you're speaking to matters and determines how you speak to them and communicate with them. Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
If you're doing, you mentioned about knowing who your audience is. So when you started working in the UK, I mean, the methodology of how to get to the answer is the same, but were you surprised by, the things you discovered about UK-based audiences versus Kenyan-based audiences? And I guess you touched on like the humor and stuff as well, but what was that experience for you, suddenly working in that market?
I think even down to things like accents. So the way our organization works makes us interact with the clients quite often. And in the beginning, there were times when I couldn't quite make out of some words. I mean, we're all speaking English, but the accents are a bit heavy for me to listen to. And it's interesting because recently, well, in 2022, when I started, one of our clients, I went to a webinar where he was, and I couldn't quite hear him. And recently I was on a webinar with the same person and I could hear almost everything. So I think it's
your ear develops.
Yeah, your ear develops. You just learn how to listen to the different parts of, like what people are trying to say. Yeah.
I mean, I had very similar experiences. Obviously, my accent, I'm South African, but I live in the UK now.
Yeah.
I remember my very first interaction. I was actually in the office, days of the office, and I was sitting next to a colleague, and he asked me a question, and I heard, "Do you have a gun?" And as a South African, that's a normal question. So I answered it, and I said, "Yes, I have one, but it's not here in the UK. I've left it in South Africa. It's in my safe." And his eyes went huge, and he was like, "What?" And so I said, "Oh, what did you ask me?" And he'd asked me, "Do you have a garden?" And that's not a South African question, because everyone in South Africa has a garden. But in the UK, having a garden is like really, especially in London.
Yeah.
Not so much in the village where I live now, but in London, it's it's really hard to find space with a garden. And but because my concept of what the question should have been, and the fact that I didn't understand the accent, I interpreted a completely wrong answer. So that always sticks with me. So now, before I answer anything, if I've heard the word gun, I know it was not that. I must ask again.
It might not be gun.
He must have been like, "Huh? Gun?"
He was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Interesting. Yeah.
And what tips do you have for people in these sort of digital nomad kind of roles for working effectively with their teams? What do you think makes it work?
I think you have to kind of immerse yourself in the culture. The fact that I'm in Kenya and the audience is in the UK makes it 10 times harder to do that. But what has worked for me is, obviously, our organization is very small. So we have various touch points with the people in the UK and even with the clients. So that means naturally I got to interact with them more. But in a situation where you can't do that, these webinars being held by clients or whoever it is. So attend those webinars, read their books, even something as small as watching movies will help you to pick out the little differences between your culture and theirs. So that would be my main point. Obviously, we live in a world where information is everywhere. I almost always have ChatGPT on, and if there's something I'm not quite clear about, if it will, relate for the people in the UK, I'll always ask ChatGPT, like, does this work in the UK context? And it'll rehash it for you or just blatantly tell you no or yes. For example, the other day I was writing a piece of material and I used the word lead magnet. And then halfway through, I realized this is for people who are not particularly marketers. That's not a very common word for non-marketers. So I went on ChatGPT because I was still, battling, having the dilemma in my head. Literally asked it, is lead magnet a common word among, the rest of the world? And the answer was obviously no. So then I could translate it to a softer version that's palatable to anyone who's reading it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, Alex and I, we end up talking about AI and ChatGPT quite a lot on these episodes.
Yeah.
And that's actually a great use of it. I hadn't thought of that use before in terms of give me an alternative word. That's great.
I mean, Google can't
especially
really
in the
do that for
context of
you.
culture.
So
Google just gives you synonyms, which doesn't have context.
translate. Yeah, exactly.
It's the context that's the big thing. I mean, it's like I don't know if any of you have watched Friends, but there's a Friends episode that just reminds me of where there's a letter, and then Joey needs to make the letter sound really fancy with big words. And the letter kind of makes sense in a really simple way. But then he's used the synonyms for every single word in the letter. And some synonyms have completely different meanings. So he's used like big words for every single thing. But it ends up being the what he wanted to say and what he said originally now makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So it just brings me to the point of what you're saying about context with the question. So using it to provide you some context, especially if you're outside of the culture and to make sense within a different culture, that makes a lot of sense. It's a really, really good point.
And in terms of working with a team, in terms of working with people not in the same vicinity as you, any tips there?
I'll be honest, it's quite challenging I don't have an experience where I've been in an office 24/7, but working from home proved to be a bit challenging, especially in the beginning, just being boxed in this room every single day. I kind of missed the hybrid environment where, I'd walk up to my colleagues and, when we're getting coffee at the same time and whatnot. So that was my biggest challenge, that I was missing that physical interaction bit of it. But then about a year ago, we introduced this new virtual space called Gather. I know Erica has been on, and we literally have these tiny little desks and, like avatars. We have a kitchen, we have a library, and it's just made life a lot easier. So I can just walk up to my colleague and, ask her something or crack a joke, or sometimes I just need a quick advice or whatever. So that has made life a lot easier, and I feel less isolated. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have any rules for working at home in terms of like physically in your home? Like before I start working, I need to be outside walking for 10 minutes, or at 12 o'clock or whatever, I need to get out. Do you have any strict rules for yourself?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to, because naturally I'm an introvert, so I could stay in the house for 3 weeks even without leaving the house. But eventually it gets to you, like you need some sun, you need to see people, you need to talk to people. So I have a lot of rules for myself. I'm part of a running club every Saturday morning. I run during the week as well, attend live music, concerts and whatnot. So yeah, I definitely have rules for myself, and it's very strict. Like, this is a running day, so we must get out, because it doesn't come naturally to me.
I actually quite like to get out in the morning. I feel like if I wake up and then I'm in the same house and I go to the same room to then work, and I haven't left since the early afternoon the day before, my brain starts to get quite fogged. So one of my things is I love to get up in the morning and just go out, at least just walk around the local vicinity, get a bit of fresh air, just start again, like reset myself, and then go back to the office. And I find that helps quite a lot.
Which I suppose is similar to when you were commuting, right? Like when you were traveling to the office, it's just having that head space, the transition space to go, right, now it's work time.
Yeah.
It's just that now it's on you. Like you need to be disciplined enough to tell yourself that even if you don't feel like doing it, you need to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And this, I don't know how this is going to sound, but anyway, I'm going to say it. When you're commuting and you're saying you're going into the office, you wake up and you're like, right, I'm going to go out to the world and I'm going to see people. So I need to shower. I need to, really ready myself. But if you're working from home, you just kind of wake up and you're like, I don't need to shower. I could just kind of, I can still have my pajama bottoms on and just change my t-shirt and then go to my computer and start working. And I think that routine that we had before when we're working in person, it makes a big difference. Waking up, showering, kind of waking yourself up, getting out to the world and starting a day. So I think like it's important to try and replicate that in some form or another.
Yeah. To present yourself with the same, decency, if I could say, as you would to the outside world.
the same standard. Yeah.
Yeah, the same standard. Yeah.
Brilliant. So Laura, if anyone wants to get hold of you, either to talk about your experiences or maybe to find out more about Outside Ideas, how do they do that?
So I'm available on LinkedIn. My name is Laura Ayienga. Let me just spell my surname, Ayienga. Or you could leave me an email on marketing@outside-ideas.com.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Any last tips you want to leave our listeners? My brain is all over the place today.
This would kind of be repetition, but I think the best way to learn something is to experience it. So it's not to read about it or to look at it, it's to immerse yourself in whatever you're trying to learn. So marketing for an international audience is not that much different from marketing within different contexts of even the same country or, whatever. So you kind of need to immerse yourself in the culture and understand these people to the best of your ability, whether you're physically there or online. The best way is to attend the webinar or read their book or speak to them, have a one-to-one with somebody who is from the country you're trying to immerse yourself in. I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned, working from Kenya for a country that I've never been to.
I love that. I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
Alex, anything you want to wrap up with?
I don't know, wake up, take a shower, take a walk outside, then start your day.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show with us. I really look forward to continuing to work with you and watch your journey. It's so exciting. Laura and I end up talking marketing every week. We have the best marketing chats. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. That wraps up this episode of Giraffes Don't Eat Steak. Thanks for joining us. I hope you found value in our discussion and got some new ideas to apply to your own business. Tune in next week for another round of marketing insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you listening. Catch you next time on Giraffes Don't Eat Steak.